thank you for joining me again for another episode of Black Men Speak. I'm the host and creator, Shauna Love. My co-host and my darling brother, Kimani Pasaya, is not with me today. But I do have with me my dear friend, Ishmael Reed. And a little bit of background on Ishmael. He is an author, a novelist, a poet, playwright, musician. He's a retired professor from UC Berkeley. He's the winner of numerous awards, including the prestigious MacArthur Fellowship Award, which is also known as the Genius Award, the renowned LA Times Robert Kirsch Lifetime Achievement Award, the Lila Wallace Reader's Digest Award. He's been nominated for a Pulitzer, and he's been a finalist for 2 National Book Awards. He has, as you can tell, an illustrious career, and he's an incredibly accomplished person, but more importantly, or equally as important, he's a dear friend of mine who I've known for almost 20 years now, right, Ish? It's been a long time. Right. And I feel like I'm still always learning more about you, and I certainly learn so much from you every time we have a conversation. So I'm just so grateful that you took the time out of your busy schedule. Still jet lag, having just come back from London. I know you travel so much. And just taking this time to talk with me and to share your thoughts and feelings and your perspective with our audience. So thank you for being here.
Great, thank you.
And so Ish, as you know, the purpose of this show is to change the narrative about Black men by changing the narrator to Black men, and basically just creating a space for brothers to talk about their own experiences, their own feelings, and their own perspectives. And you have been speaking on this subject of social justice and Black empowerment and civil rights and so many different related topics for decades now. You have been such an outstanding and courageous voice in the Black community. I just thank you for taking the time to share a little bit more of what you think. So we're going to start off with our prompt, which is, from your perspective, what's hurting Black men?
Well, what's hurting Black men is the same thing as hurting Hispanic, Latinx, and Native American men. We're under occupation, and white men are in charge. So that's the way it is in history. If you were under occupation, the occupiers call the shots.
Yeah.
So that's why, and added to that, there's a now, for example, I'm looking at the French-Indian War right now for a play that I'm writing. Matter of fact, just the reading of the play has caused a lot of controversy. Some of the people who conquer other lands or who have the firepower to assert their will over the subjects will intermarry with the subjugated people, like the French. Mm-hmm. French tell me that we really lost out after the French-Indian War because the British took over. But others claim this thing about white supremacy.
Right.
And that's what we're stuck with in this country.
Right.
So from the time of the Puritans to now, people who are not white are regarded as interchangeable with animals or beasts. So that's how this particular phase of North American civilization, the so-called Euro or Anglo phase, starts out in the 1600s. So that explains just about everything that happens to Black men and Black women. That, the people who have the firepower of the police, the army, you heard this president, he gives it away. They don't like him because he just pours out his psyche that he says what other people think, what other people, that's why they're embarrassed. He said, well, we have the army, the police, and the Blackers.
Yeah, he definitely has no filter.
No.
And the people around him have a very difficult time restraining him from saying the things.
Well, they believe the same thing, but he just works it out.
Right, yeah.
They're
Yeah.
they're trying to pretend like he's the first racist president in history. I mean, which is ridiculous. I found during my writing this play, which is an answer to Hamilton, which I just spent $1,000 to have a reading, and it was covered in the New York Times 3 times, and the New York Observer, and Billboard, and all these magazines. Big controversy. Big people are curious because I'm messing with their creation. But I found that even the most intellectual of people in this country don't know American history. So if you know American history, you'll see that this is nothing new. As a matter
Right.
of fact, I just collaborated with an author named Kathy Jackson, Black economist. Her book is out. And I'm saying that what Black men and women should do now is to defend their assets as a question of survival. Let all these public intellectuals
Can you
on
say that one more
TV
time? What we should do is what?
protect your assets as a matter of
Oh,
survival.
right.
So
Absolutely.
50% of I think most I think about 70% of people are a couple of paychecks away from homelessness in this country. But I think Black Americans have an obligation to not an obligation, but I would recommend that they collect assets so they can pass it on to other generations and become more financial literate. I was illiterate until I met this woman, and she taught me how Black people are victimized by capitalism. You know,
Right.
they're all defending capitalism now because some of the people in the Democratic Party are arguing for socialism, which incidentally arose in this country. The word socialism began in the United States, didn't begin in Russia and things like that. But capitalism has always been hostile to Black people. The banks,
It's always sort of gamed us out, right? We've never
well,
really been.
since what people don't realize is that after emancipation, Black people, even in slavery, had $57 million put into a bank, and
Wow.
they were urged by the government to put money in the bank. And then when the bank went flop or went bust, the government reneged on the promise to back this money. So that's Black people's first experience with capitalism, and then it's been downhill ever since. So I argue in the introduction of this book called "How to Survive Financially When the System is Rigged Against You," that first of all, they don't have enough money to pay reparations. $57 million is billions. If you go back 300 years, it would bust. It would just break up the treasury. They don't have enough money to pay that. But if you go back there in that beginning of Black people's experience with capitalism, up to now, they've been taken. They're not the takers, they're the taken. They use the assets of Blacks to build the equity of others. But that's where my head is right now. I think that in terms of what people call microaggression, which is a
Right.
term I heard in the 70s, nothing new. James Spady, who's a sort of like off-campus intellectual historian, he gave an award to. He's used that term a long time ago. But in terms of microaggression, I think people have to be just discreet about that and look forward to the bigger battles. I mean, I get insulted every day. I teach on. I'm retired. I'm teaching at Berkeley. I teach up there. I have a class twice a week, and I'm teaching at California College of the Arts. And I'm still disrespected as a professor, so that when I go up to the Golden Bear Park at the top of Bancroft to do an exercise, the neighbors up there call the police on me constantly. There's always police cops showing up. So, but that's how you live under occupation,
Right.
which is the way Native Americans see it. And so when you see it as this temporary occupation, it's coming to an end because they don't have the numbers. And what I see is a big exodus out to New Zealand and Australia because they can't fight it out. They can't fight it out with an army that's been, armed forces have been integrated since the 1940s. So they can't fight it out. So I see a big exodus happening. So the reason for Trump is that they don't have the numbers to enforce this. So the occupation, what happens in the occupation is people go back they leave, and they don't have the numbers to have the power. So I'm very optimistic about that. So I just say that I would recommend that black intellectuals, black men and black women look at the experience of other groups as I have. I call myself ethnic gate crasher. So you might show me up, you might find me at an Irish American conference, Italian American book party, or whatever. And you compare your situation with others, especially Native Americans and Latinx people and all that. And you'll find that you're the majority, that the majority feel the way you feel. Now, if you look at these polls, it's always black and white. That's a commercial thing that media use. But if you put Hispanics and blacks together on like police brutality, blacks and Hispanics will probably both get polled by the similar percentages. So the reason they leave them out, even though they're sort of like the major minority, is that they don't want to embarrass what they consider as the chosen people, or the, when I say chosen people, I mean the people who believe that their skin color gives them status over others.
Right. Well, it's an interesting thing, and this may be veering a little bit off topic, but just sort of putting together multiple pieces of what you just discussed about colonization and being on occupied land, and white people quickly becoming no longer the majority, right, to be able to sustain the occupation. The Latin population here in the United States is, if it has not already, I think by year 2020, it will eclipse the population of Caucasian.
It's already eclipsed. What they do is they use racial designations for blacks and whites, and use a linguistic designation for Hispanics, which sort of like hides the fact that there are millions of black and millions of Hispanics with African ancestry.
Right. Well, also
throughout
Latin America, I find that the colonized mentality is still the dominant mentality. And most of the people that I know who live here in the United States, who come from different parts of Latin America, even if they're first, second, or third generation, they seem to have as much racism, a racist mentality as white people in parts of this country that I would have originally perhaps referred to the Deep South, but now it's just all over the country. We're seeing this racist mentality emerge.
I think that's the older generation.
So my question to you is, and what I've been thinking about is, now that Latinos or Latinx people are going to be the majority here in the United States, even though many of them may have some African blood or African descent, many of them are also white Latinos, or they identify as white. Will it be any different when they carry the same type of colonial mentality of racism as the colonizers?
Well, blacks have a colonial mentality. Some of them. For example, let's play Hamilton. Hamilton was a slave trader, and who believed that Indians should be exterminated, or Native Americans should be exterminated. Black people buying tickets like they're going out of style to see this, which is opposed to that. But I think that's happening. That's changing on the younger generation. I think it's a lot of intermarriage among the younger generation, so that the fastest rising so-called group in this country are biracial people, and I think it's also people want to choose sides. They want to be on the winning side, and I agree with you. I had a big fight at a conference, not a big fight, but I had a debate with a Hispanic professor in France, and he was talking about how great immigration was and all that. I said, listen, the way I see it is that immigration means more racists added to the ones who are already here. For example, in the Mexican American or the Mexican media, they perpetrate stereotypes about black people that even the Americans have avoided. I mean, those old 1930s caricatures and stuff you see in Disney cartoons and things. And so they come in here with those attitudes because they've been influenced by the Mexican media. Now a number of black leaders were Mexican. A number of leading revolutionaries and leaders in Mexico were black, and that's true of the diaspora. And the last Mexican governor, Senor Pico, was biracial. So they just got around to acknowledging the so-called third root in the 90s. The third root meaning the African root. So the Mexicans just got around to acknowledging that. So that shows you the mentality of people who are arriving here. They come in with racist attitudes because, they do the same thing in Latin America, spend billions of dollars on skin lightening down in so-called, South America, Caribbean. But I mean, when this group begins to lose, then people will go black. So people have a choice between, joining the Anglo so-called majority or going black, and a lot of them go black. So sometimes you wonder which way integration is going. But I think that from what I see among the youth, and the fact that more Black, Latinx, Asian Americans, and others are moving into powerful positions in academia, and which is where a lot of the mischief comes from. For example, I'm writing my new book of essays. It's called "Why Don't Confederate Statues in Mexico?" Because not many people, including official historians, understand that the Confederate generals they went to school for mass murder in Mexico. Stonewall Jackson, Jefferson Davis, Robert Lee were all down there killing Mexicans first. And they killed Native Americans. Not many people, they're shocked to hear that these statues to these men in the South are tributes to mass murderers. Who mowed down Mexican children, women and children, and given a thought about it. Stonewall Jackson's sister said, "Well, don't you feel bad? Left them on the side of the road, the coyotes eating these people." And of course, on the cover of the book, you get a statue of Robert E. Lee, but you also get a statue. You get pictures of these Latinos, these Mexican children, who stood up to Robert E. Lee. They refused to surrender. They're 13 to 19 years old, and they fought the American forces. So not many people know that history. So when you know that history, you can somehow gather the way that things are going. So I think that it's mixed. They may want to fight it out. They'll have a few skirmishes if they go against the armed forces. These so-called white nationalists who are really, really woofing. Daring everybody and this man they put in power. They may want to fight it, but I think they'll be discouraged, and we'll see what happens. But we are at a turning point in American civilization.
You've been around for a long time, Ish, and that not a disparaging.
A lot of people say too long.
A lot of
people say too long.
Well, I know that you have your critics, and I know that you've always been a controversial figure, but that's what also makes you so impactful, right? Because you're a truth teller, and you're not.
Harry Truman said, they said, give them hell. He said, I don't give them hell. I just tell the truth. They think it's hell.
Yeah, exactly. You have seen so much happen during some critical junctures in American history. I know that you had met Malcolm X and perhaps were friends with him at one point. I've seen you giving interviews with Huey P. Newton, so you were affiliated with the Black Panthers, or at least you knew them. Did you also know Martin as well, Martin Luther King Jr.?
No, I didn't know him.
Okay.
I knew some of those people. I met Reverend Sharpton, Jesse. I know some of those people, Jesse Jackson.
Yeah.
But I consider myself an independent because in the 60s, I saw how organization can be infiltrated. So I figured, I just see myself as a one-man think tank. That's my contribution. That I can monitor the media. Because I learned how to do low-cost stuff, low-cost talk back or fight back. Like we spent, I think, $400 on our boycott of the media, right? I got a Nightline. And I was able to debate, broke all those people. Pretty boys, they don't know anything. And then I spent $1,000 on this reading I had in New York with all these actors, replying, giving the Native American, we have two Native American actors, giving Native American point of view of slaves and indentured servants about Hamilton and that period, George Washington. And they sent one of their people the first night, very distinguished historian, met Gordon Reed. And she asked me, had I seen Hamilton? That was the first Q&A after the audience. We had standing room only, and the full production will happen on May 23rd. And I said, well, I read the book, but it turns out she's on the payroll. And I admire her very much. But Hamilton and his people, she's a consultant to some museum they're building to Hamilton. So, yeah, you know, it made the times where she said, well, she saw both Hamilton, which I saw recently, even made me more of a critic. They told me to go see it.
Yeah.
So I see it. Now I'm more of a critic, and I'm doing revisions. And she said, well, the compromise would be for my script to be distributed to the 1,000 school children who received the Hamilton, which has got all those people as abolitionists when they weren't. So I spent $1,000 on that. We spent $40,000 on a movie, 2.5-hour meta, we call it meta soap opera. They're playing it at the Pacific Film Archives on Thursday night.
Oh.
And it's been restored. We spent $40,000 and free cinema magazines, and it's been restored. Free cinema magazines and our forum magazine says one of the best films of last year, which is easy, right? And we beat out these big blockbusters. So I said, low budget, you know, that you can talk back. If younger people want to know how we talk back, we find out how to do it in a low budget manner. Theirs is a $100 million operation. They're worried about us.
Right.
They're getting $100 million a year for Hamilton. They try to buy off our leading man. I mean,
wow.
Yeah, so they're scared. They have every right to be scared because they're wrong.
Thinking about all that we've talked about, you know, I'm just kind of storing up all these tidbits from our conversation so far, and I'm still kind of like nestled in this idea of being occupied, right? Living under occupation,
Yeah.
and all the different ways that that kind of thing shows up. The importance of talking back, as you said, and having that freedom of voice and doing things like what we're doing right now, right? Which is a very low budget way of getting a message out to the public, and how important that is. And the shifting demographics of our country, with white people no longer being the majority in terms of raw numbers in their population, that's transitioning and shifting over to the Latinx population. Where do you think that's going to position us? And you've seen a lot of movements come and go during the civil rights movement, and, you know, the Black Renaissance in Harlem, so many different things, right? The Black Power movement that tried to resurface again in the early 90s and got kind of wiped out by crack cocaine and gangster rap. Where do you think we're going to net out, let's say, at the beginning of 2020, or perhaps even where we are right now, you know, under the Trump presidency? And what type of things do you think work as strategies for, you know, for empowerment, for coping, and for thriving under these conditions?
Well, I think you know, the kind of media that you're working with, we're almost at a playing field. I get on Facebook, and my comments about Facebook get picked up by the New Yorker magazine. They look at my stuff. So I think you are showing a way to talk back. You know, I asked Robert Polidori, who did the cinema work for Out There in 1981, 3/4 inch. He said that the state of the art equipment now can be obtained very inexpensively. So you can rent some of this, you know, expensive equipment for say $200, $300 a day. I mean, if we had that, we could have done Ben-Hur and Cold Bottles at the same time, at the time. So as the equipment becomes more affordable in social media, there's an opportunity to talk back. So I think that's one way to do it, and it presents an opportunity that was not available, say, in the 1960s or 70s. You can imagine Malcolm, if he had a podcast,
Right.
he wouldn't have had to expose himself in public and get shot, maybe.
Yeah.
So I think this is a powerful new instrument, a new tool for communicating not only to people in your own country, but people around the world. I have what I call a global strategy, which is one of the reasons I was in London. They published my books over in London. And my global strategy began when I published a novel called Japanese by Spring. As a matter of fact, as a response to that, the books are being translated in China. The study of that novel is paid for by the Chinese government. And I went to Japan. So you really don't have to, as a writer, the way I figured it out, I don't have to audition for tokenism. They kill us with tokenism. Like this Manhattan people. That's what I said in the New York Times a few months ago when they did a feature on black male, the resurgence of black male writers, right? Which I thought ironic because the New York Times book reviewers ignored my last 5 books. Well, that's some resurgence, but anyway, that Manhattan has given us tokens for about 100 years. And what the token does, one filmmaker, one novelist, what it does is suppresses a variety of voices. So one of the reasons that we built our foundations out here was to counteract that. And I think we've done a very successful job. We've given hundreds of people who do not receive awards from prize grant-giving places in the East, like National Book Award, Post and all that. We recognize them. And that has enhanced their sales and, has boosted their careers. So we build foundations at the same time.
Yeah. Speaking of black male writers, I recently became aware of this sort of confrontation between Cornel West and Ta-Nehisi Coates. I don't know if you're aware of that conflict where Cornel West was very critical of Ta-Nehisi, and I was just wondering if you had any thoughts or feelings about that or any reaction to it. My initial reaction was that even though, sorry, I know I asked you a question and now I'm kind of answering for myself, but I just want to share what I thought or my perspective was, even though I think Cornel West probably had some very valid criticisms, I felt like it could have been done in a different way that wasn't pitting one prominent Black voice against another. And I felt that by doing that, it created like a divide and conquer dynamic between the two. And it makes us look as though we're not unified and we're infighting, right? Rather than working together. And I just felt like my initial reaction was, why didn't Cornel West call Ta-Nehisi up on the phone and say, hey, brother, let's talk. He's an elder. Cornel's an elder. Ta-Nehisi's a young man who's just emerging on the scene, really. And he could have had so much insight and wisdom to share rather than publicly criticizing him to the point that Ta-Nehisi shut down his Twitter account. So I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts, if you have any opinions on that?
Well, it's like basketball. You got all the black guys out there playing. You got all the guys in the suits and management sitting on the sidelines.
Right.
Those people didn't come up from the grassroots like Malcolm and others, or Stephen Carmichael and some of those people with whom I have disagreements, the Black Panthers. They have constituencies that are not black, okay? So up to recently, Ta-Nehisi Coates says that it was sponsored by, I think, the widow of Steve Jobs. So he had $1 billion behind him. He's writing for Atlantic magazine. I think there's a couple of rich guys white guys who do the Republic where I tried to get them to act right after I was smeared in that magazine. So they have constituencies. And that's the reason that you hear about them. Okay?
Yeah. Isn't this an opportunity for some of the elders like yourself who do come up from the grassroots, who have so much wisdom and life experience, to kind of pull him to the side and say, hey, young brother, let's talk about this. Like, I'm not trying to mess up your situation. I know you got these sponsors, you got this posh position with Atlantic magazine. I just want to hip you to some things that you may not be aware of and share a different perspective. right? I just feel like it's a great opportunity for collaboration and for mentoring, if you know, for lack of a better word. But just that relationship, that historical relationship in communities of all colors, right? Of the elders just grooming the youngsters and sharing their wisdom and their experience to help them course correct or navigate or just to have greater insight, right? It, yeah, I just felt like that was an opportunity missed. And I'm not criticizing Cornel West for his opinions or even his course of action. I just felt like it could have been more productive for us as a whole if he had approached it not as an attack or a criticism, but rather as, hey, I'm gonna take this young man up under my wing. And by the way, I feel the same way about Jesse Smollett. Are you familiar with this case about this young actor from the Empire TV show?
All this is entertainment.
Say that again?
All this is entertainment.
It's all entertainment, right?
How many black people you know read the Line from Muffin? How many black people you know read the New Republic? It's all for entertainment of
Yeah.
audience. And both these guys they're good. They're good. They're smart, but they're proxies. They're proxies. You know, I mean,
they're standing to represent.
Absolutely, it's difficult to tell people that there are black writers around who wrote as well or better than James Baldwin.
Right.
James Baldwin was the one who got all the publicity. He's on TV, so people know James Baldwin is just sort of like an elegant guy who cuts out white folks in a very elegant, eloquent way, dressed well and all that. But he had to knock down a whole lot of people before he reached the top. He had to jump on Richard Wright. He had to jump on Chester Atkins. He had to jump on Langston Hughes in order to be the last surviving person on the island. When they tried to make me a token, I wrote a letter saying, "No, I don't need your token. There are people who write well," and I left New York.
Wow.
See, Ralph Ellison, when he got the National Book Award, he should have gone back to St. Louis. I mean, that's a rat race back there. And not only the writers, but all the other artists have to cutthroat each other in order to be number one, or to be like the painters in order to get accepted by the gallery. They have to do abstract expressionism. So I went to see a black show at Brooklyn, and I thought one of the best illustrations in there was Norman Rockwell, who had the marshal leading that black kid into the school, this famous thing that Norman Rockwell did. Of the illustration of the federal marshal holding that black kid by her hand and integrating this school. I dug that. All the other stuff is just this stuff, abstract stuff. I said, what's it called? But see, they had to do that in order to get into Uptown Gallery. So I think that you can find genius in Kansas City. You can find genius in New Orleans.
Yeah.
I mean, Salamu Salam, who found an anthology of New Orleans writers. He found 100 black writers in New Orleans. So we have to stop thinking about people who are promoted by the media and publicity in Manhattan.
Right.
And Cornel West is a smart guy, but then he told black people to vote for the Green Party candidate. We had nothing to do with that. We had 3 intellectuals that they've chosen to be pundits and chosen to be spokespersons. One said that black people ought to not vote for Hillary Clinton in states that she would win. And the other guy said stay home. And so now we got Trump. Nobody had any influence over that. So I think that what will happen to these guys, and I like both of them, they can write, is the same thing that happened to Baldwin. Here's Baldwin had to do a hatchet job on all the other black writers, got to the top. They love him. Like some people have read A Little Fire Next Time. I read it carefully. I used his novel, of course, a couple semesters ago at CCA. And he ran into trouble with them. See. They like Fire Next Time because he said, I'm going to redeem you. He said, he's a preacher, he's a white preacher. You know, that first novel, go tell it on mountain. He doesn't really tackle some of the issues that Louise Merriweather tackles. And in her novel, Daddy Was a Number Runner. She's 90 years old now, and she really wrote a hard-hitting novel about Harlem. Her Harlem is quite different from his Harlem. His Harlem is about being in the church and scared to go downtown, and then he ends with a thrashing floor where he's converted. And so he says, I'm going to convert liberals, all right? I'm going to convert you. And then he has take a swipe at Elijah Muhammad. Yes, he goes out there. This is what the token has to do. He has to go out and distance himself from the community. So he goes out and interviews Elijah Muhammad. And he said, well, I don't agree with him. He's telling people, the liberals back in New York who sponsored him, I don't agree with them. And then he says that Elijah Muhammad, those people are getting their money from Texas millionaires. This is an insult. This is a workers' cooperative. These people had farms, that white sabotage. They had the fish, they had treaties with different countries. And, they were in business. Money would go to Chicago. And so, they would put it back into different enterprises. So that was a smear. But at the end, he got sick of them, the people who were sponsoring him. And his greatest novel, as far as I'm concerned, is How Long the Train's Been Going. You don't even hear about that now.
Mm-mm.
He turns on them. He turns on the sponsors, the people who put him up. He has scathing satire. You can recognize these people because he got in trouble with Lee Strasberg at Actors Studio. They messed up Blues Mr. Child. They messed it up so he threatened to commit suicide. Okay, same experience he had in Hollywood. The Devil Finds Work. It's ironic that they're doing Beale Street. I mean, it's amazing because they hated that book when it came out. But they dropped him. So the token, as always, has to realize that his sponsors, the people who are sponsoring Tommy Shelton, will turn on them and get somebody else. So when James Baldwin turned on his sponsors, they got Eldridge Cleaver. And what is the thing that Eldridge Cleaver does? He does the same thing to Baldwin that Baldwin did to Richard Wright. Sons who slay their fathers. So that's the kind of fratricidal stuff you get into. And so they find us debating about the people they've chosen instead of talking about somebody like Hakeem Matabuti.
I'm glad you said that because I was just wondering to myself, what is the impact on the average Black person when our talented 10th, right, when our Black intelligentsia, when those people who are the voice for so many of the rest of us are fighting with one another, jockeying for a position, when they're being sponsored and tokenized and potentially just bought out, right?
Well, the talented 10 arises. The talented 10th, like Gates and all of them, arise because the establishment got sick of these off-campus guys, like Rap Brown and all the people. Huey Newton, Huey Newton got a PhD in Santa Cruz. But most of those guys were off-campus guys who started, raising the consciousness. Malcolm X. I interviewed Robert Seale, and he said that Black Studies begins with the death of Malcolm X. And so my first encounter with Malcolm X, during my first encounter, he was talking about history. He was talking about Black history. Because he learned more in prison than we learned in these colonial schools, you understand?
Right.
Because he learned Black history. And plus Elijah Muhammad, though he had very little education, he read 100 books from the Library of Congress. So he was a genius. You have to, no matter what you think of it, he was a genius. So they got sick of those guys. So they brought in this talented 10th natives. I mean, that's what the Puritans did. They brought in some Indian who could speak English, and he'd go out. Excuse me. He would go out. I forgot his name. He would go out and come back and tell the colonials what the natives were up to. So they had this native named King Philip who fought the invasion, fought the Puritan invasion. So this guy would go back and say, well, King Philip, he's up there drinking liquor and dancing a lot. So we had the same thing. We had the same thing. I said, what are these? Adolph Reed put it very well. Adolf Reed Jr. says he have to have somebody go back and say, tell him what the drums mean. So that's the role of the tell and the tenth. I mean, that's why I encourage, and nobody, people in this country read my books, but I encourage one of my books that all these off-campus people try to get as much space. Like, I'm not saying you're educated, but I mean, you have this social media. So it's time for off-campus, unofficial, off-campus intellectuals to get their points of view instead of these people designating spokespersons.
I love that. And particularly coming from you, Ish, being a university professor, the fact that you are honoring and recognizing genius and intellect.
But I don't have a BA. I don't have a BA.
That's
I don't
right.
have a BA. 30% of poor people cannot attend college.
Yeah.
But, I went to a university and I dropped out and they gave me a doctorate.
An honorary doctorate, right?
Then a few years ago, they that called me the alumni of the year. So I was back. But,
so there's a lot to be said, right, for self-learning. There's a lot
absolutely,
to be an
absolutely,
autodidact.
absolutely. You don't have to sit around watching TV and eating bad food. You can get into books like everybody else. You can read,
Right.
and you can make your voice and your point of view known. So
Right.
that when you settle with this talent, the 10th, which comes from Du Bois. Du Bois was, an elitist, and that's where the stuff comes from. Although they say that he abandoned that, and he had some nice things to say about Hitler, Germany. They shut him up and wine and dine him over there. He's a German, sort of like a Deutsche file, what do you call it? He studied over there. I wrote that. Amir Rocket got so mad at me. But they found out that Du Bois went to Germany and wine and dine with the Nazis and everything. Had a good time. Went to the opera. So I wrote that. Amir Rocket cussed me out in public. But then when we went to reception, I said, man, you know the guy.
You've made quite a career for yourself by ticking other people off.
Good friends. We had fallen out, but I mean, up until his death, we were good communicating. And I published his books. I published two of his books, Loco Poco and City Full of Heroic. And sat down in Hollywood was brilliant. Sat down in Hollywood where the Oscar comes alive and starts making love to this black guy.
Yeah. Ishmael, would you then recommend that people so one of our follow-up questions, right, to our initial prompt is what can be done and what can we do as individuals, like starting right now? And I almost hear an implication of putting together study groups, right? Where people are just.
I'll tell you what. You get extended black family, and pool of resources and buy some real estate. Now, in terms of theoretical stuff or cultural stuff, everybody should read the greatest book on slavery, emancipation, and freedom, Margaret Walker's Jubilee. I taught that book.
What's the name?
Jubilee.
Mm-hmm.
Jubilee. And I'll tell you everything you need to know about how to survive.
Wonderful.
And she wrote well. She was a contemporary Baldwin. The guys got all the publicity.
Right.
Even though they were barely accepted. I mean, Richard Wright was persecuted all his life, possibly murdered. But they got all the publicity. So
it's important right now, to have the conceptual, theoretical, and historical perspective. But you seem to be in a place of
they have to
right?
Get some of these guys, these narcissistic guys, to get a living trust so they can pass on some assets to the children.
Yeah.
Now I have two situations. I don't want to mention these people's names. It all goes back to the Freedom Bank. The first experience of capitalism. Black people started putting their money in mattresses and things. And here's this guy saved money all his life. And he died. And the sheriff and all the police came in and took his money. He hadn't made any preparation for like leaving money to maybe school or black college or something. And that's another thing. Du Bois and Du Bois had this thing about education. Tuskegee is still there. You know, they just did a thing. They just did today's Times. They had a thing where 847 uh, openings, and there were 847 openings in these elite high schools, and blacks only got 7. They should support black colleges.
Yeah.
They should
But I
support.
hear you really focusing on the financial literacy, right? Like,
Oh, absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. Because you know, they get you coming and going. Like this neighborhood is no longer a black neighborhood. That's
And the
what,
neighborhood you're referring to is Oakland, California, right? The
yeah.
area where you live.
A lot of neighborhoods. I call it involuntary black flight. Involuntary black flight. Because of the banks and the hostility that the banks and capitalist system have toward black people. They
Right.
couldn't achieve home ownership because of redlining and stuff like that.
Right.
So when the gentrifiers decide they want to come back, this is an old thing. That's how they used to move Indians around. You know, just come and say, you Indians can't live here, you have to live over there. You know, black removal. That's because the banks, you know, are hostile to black home ownership. So
Right.
yeah, financial literacy is important. All this other stuff is rhetoric. And Cornell and Tanisha, they're great guys. You can read them. They got opinions, you know. But blacks have to sort of like build up their assets. And it's not. This is just for self-protection because there are all these forces that want to take your money away from you, like these payday loan banks. The blacks have to get into what I call interest slavery. Interest slavery, 300% interest, 500% interest.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you ought to have Kathy on. She knows how to talk about this stuff. Kathy Jackson. She's an economist. She handles millions of dollars. But she handled my financial affairs. And so why don't you write a book? And the book is published by Hakeem Matabuti. Hakeem Matabuti, very well pressed. He's doing more than all these other people.
Yeah.
He's contributing more than both the guys we're talking about. But he carries a low profile. You know, he has black publishing companies been in business for decades, 50 years.
You know, I absolutely agree with everything you're saying. And what comes to mind for me also is just the history that we have had of building and rebuilding over and over again in this country. And it's not that Black folks have not known how to be entrepreneurs and how to be business people. It's that every time we build something, it seems like one way or another, either through institutionalized racism or through just straight up pogroms, right? With the Klan coming in and burning down, like, Black Wall Street or Rosewood.
The underground economy, you know, the Irish and Italians and Jews, Jewish gangsters taking over Harlem, the numbers, right? You know?
Right.
And the so-called numbers people used to give, where the banks wouldn't, they would give loans to black business. I have to wind up. One more question? Can you answer one more question? I got a deadline.
You have a deadline? Actually, I think that was, well, I guess this will be my final question is, even if we develop our competency around financial literacy and entrepreneurship and home ownership and all of those things, it just seems like there's no guarantee that the establishment always seems to find some way of cheating us out of what we've gained or preventing us from attaining those things, even though we've worked for it, even though we've done all the right things. You know, throughout our history, Black folks have always done what the system says we're supposed to do, only to find out that they change the rules and use the system to rob us again or to cheat us again. And so when I think about, those things, giving advice to the Black community at large to say, how can we become more empowered? How can we be in a better position tomorrow than we are today? It seems like all of the suggestions are things that have been tried and done over and over and over again, only to be swindled in the end.
I think you have to go. You have to use multiple strategies. I think both the ballot. You've got all these people in Congress now, all these women in Congress, and also self-sufficiency.
Okay.
And changing the focus from cussing out Trump to going after the banks and going after the financial institution. Tanisha was talking about reparations. They don't have the money, and it's not going to work unless you talk about the insurance companies and the banks and all these enterprises that benefited from slavery, which was bigger than railroads, the banks, and all these other industries combined. Have them give $1 billion a year for as long as slavery was back, say 300 years, billion years, 300 years, and have that money go to institutions, building institutions.
Right.
Like
And I will say they do have enough money. It's a matter of tapping into it and distributing it equitably.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I'm not going to give them a check.
Yeah.
But I think that the banks and the other insurance companies and all these other enterprises, universities, for example, Brown and Harvard had slaves, they should contribute to $1 billion fund per year that would go into universities and black enterprises. That would be my idea of reparations. Now, you talking about these white people who are scared and angry, got their guns, paying money, it's going to be more problems.
Right. So thank you, Ishmael. So on your final note, you were talking about a multi-tiered strategy that included reparations, legislation, economics, personal aptitude, and personal responsibility. We just have to, we're being assaulted on multiple fronts, and so we have to fight back on that.
With multiple fronts, right?
Yeah.
I hope to see you in person one of these days.
Yes, I know it's been too long, so we'll set that up next time. But for right now, we still have our audience.
Even if it means coming to Sacramento.
Yeah, well, you'll let me know. Let me know when you come up to the state capitol, and we can go out and have lunch or something near the state capitol. That would be fun, and maybe we can go knock on a few congressmen's doors.
That'd be great.
So I just want to say thank you again, Ishmael, for taking time out of your day and out of your very, very busy schedule to talk to me and to share your thoughts with our audience. And it's been wonderful. I learned so much from you, as I always do.
Well,
and I look forward to the next time that we get a chance to talk.
Well, congratulations on your podcast. You have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you so much.